determines the value of a classic Mercedes? People often ask me this difficult question. They say, can you value, as in assign a market value, a number, to my classic Mercedes for me, either because I'm getting ready to sell it or I need to insure it? And this is a tricky question, and if you're in the repair business, you really shouldn't answer it for your customers, and there are a couple of reasons for that. The first trap about trying to assign value to the car is that the way the market values cars, the market in general, they don't take into account the cost to repair them, or the cost to restore them, or the cost to basically keep them in good condition, like garaging them, insuring them, washing them, detailing them, using them regularly. Now, the majority of you are going to go, okay, the value of a car is based on a thing called market consensus, where we observe the results of what has been paid for a classic car, be it a Mercedes or something else, a Porsche, Alfa Romeo, etc. We look at consensus, and then after we look at consensus, we say, because the consensus falls within this range, this range, we say that the bell curve, identifies a given number as the average price. So a great example would be this. We'll say that the average value of a 560 SL is $20,000 because the majority of buyers pay an average of $20,000 for the car. That means that there could be some buyers who are paying $10,000, more who are paying $15,000, more who are paying $17,000, even more who are paying $19,000, probably the same amount who are paying $21,000 or $22,000. Smaller number of buyers who are paying $24,000, an even smaller number are paying $27,000, and a very small number are paying $30,000. And then anything below $10,000 or over $30,000 is what is known in statistics as an outlier. But that doesn't really provide a fair valuation assessment because each car at this point in its life is so different. I prefer to cite a particular error on the side of the car buying public, and that's that the majority of people have no idea how much the sorting process or restoration process or rehabilitation process of a classic car costs. There's this often repeated line that the car will cost more to fix than it is actually worth. And, this does sort of make sense until you want to have a usable, drivable car. So what I propose is a shift in the way we see market value. Market values for cars that are actually sorted, as in usable, drivable, and good operating condition, should be significantly higher because of the expense and the time related to that process. Some individuals who are familiar with that process will value a sorted car over an unsorted car, but the flaw in how the market determines what a car is actually worth seems to do more with its cosmetic presentation and the salesmanship of the seller. That means if somebody is sort of a shy, introverted type who tends to document things but doesn't like to take a lot of pictures of their vehicle and sort of undersells it and cites its issues more than its strengths, because of psychological tendencies, people are going to be less confident in a car like this. And if somebody overpresents a car that has a bunch of issues but has a shiny paint job, they're just automatically going to pay more for it. So unfortunately, this is where we get to the river that we're trying to cross. I know too much to value a car. And if you happen to know anything about what these cars sell for, whether they're low mileage, high mileage, whether they're sorted, whether they're unsorted, how much a classic Mercedes or any car sells for boils down to three pretty stupid variables. How many miles are on the car, how well the car presents cosmetically, not how well it functions mechanically, but how well it presents cosmetically. And then finally, it's probably the one that I really despise the most, how much information the seller or selling entity does not disclose. Now, let's look at these three variables. Mileage. People are pretty mileage averse about anything to do with the car. Low miles equals good. High miles equals bad. I mean, if you look at the typical ad for a car dealer, any car dealer, what are the first three things that you're going to see? Low miles, cold air, and then usually it's followed by bad credit or no credit, no problem, but that's a story for another day. The next problem that we have is that the mileage trap is very susceptible to manipulation. 75% of the odometers on Mercedes 126 late production 107 cars starting in 1981, 123 series cars, etc., have had some kind of discrepancy in the past. You know, that's why when my friend John Woods buys a car, he goes through exhaustive efforts to verify the function and originality of the odometers on the cars, which, you know, is a pretty difficult thing to undertake, and you have to have a lot of specialized knowledge to do it. But the majority, I find the majority of people will just take at face value, whether they're buyers or sellers, whatever the odometer says, sometimes not even verifying whether it works or not. So the next variable that I find concerning, which we talked about, is the cosmetic presentation of the car. Cosmetic presentation falls into the realm of people focusing on what they understand and then not knowing anything about what they don't. Let's imagine a group of people are assessing the eruption potential of a volcano. They're going, if they're not geologists, they're just going to go look at the volcano, determine if it's shooting gas out, determine if there's maybe some hot water near it, determine if they felt any earthquakes, and determine if the ground starts to feel hot. They're not going to look at some other subtle geological signs, such as, you know, whether the steam coming out is from water or gas vapors. They're not going to look at the age of the rocks around it to try to determine if there was an eruption in the last 50 years or so. They're also not going to, you know, take a deep core temperature, sample temperature of the earth, because it's too specialized for them. They don't have a drill. So basically the only way they're going to know if the volcano is going to erupt is if it's almost about to erupt. Same thing with classic cars. People only really know if they're bad if the signs are very obvious, such as mismatched paint, excessive rust on the bottom. But sometimes these signs are often misinterpreted. A very original car that has somewhat faded paint that needs to be detailed is dirty and filthy inside and out, yet has a fairly orderly engine bay, would be considered, you know, a cheap kick it to the curb car by the majority of buyers. But by somebody who understands what they're looking at, they could see a car like that and say, oh, this is a diamond in the rough. It hasn't been touched by a bunch of idiots or over-detailed or over-presented. Sort of like saying, you know, a geyser in Yellowstone National Park is a sign of a pending volcanic eruption. Even though it's been doing it for years. Let's pretend you have no prior knowledge. It's been doing it for years, you know, but the person who stumbles out of the woods goes, man, it's hot around here. It's shooting water out. Oh, we're about to have a pretty serious eruption here, you know. Now, I know there's some discussion about Yellowstone being a volcanic hotspot, but so far nobody has melted in their car. Anyway, what I what I find so frustrating about this is that people aren't willing to admit that they don't know what they're looking at. Instead, they bid based on their lack of knowledge rather than actually embarking on a knowledge gathering campaign. Meaning that if I value a car based on my knowledge, it's like trying to explain ancient Greek philosophy in Greek to somebody who only speaks Chinese. Maybe that's kind of a stretch, but my knowledge in valuing a car or somebody else's knowledge, let's use somebody like Dean or John Woods, although they seem to know more about valuing cars than I do because they're in that business. I actually think they do. But there's a problem with valuing a car when you know too much. In this day and age, it's better to let Google AI do the valuation for you and realize that no matter what you do, each car is going to be different. It's going to have a different valuation. A different group of people are going to like the car or not like the car. It's going to appeal to some people or it may not appeal to others. What I want you to take away from this video is this. Valuing your classic Mercedes or any car is always going to be different no matter who you ask. It's always going to be difficult to arrive at a consensus because some days of the week a car is going to sell for a great price. Some days it's going to sell for a terrible price. Some days people don't want a particular car, and then some days people wake up with a moment of inspiration. They want a 240D or a 220D or a 190E or a 300 SL Roadster. It just depends. And often the most important valuation is conducted by the person who's buying the car rather than the third party who wants you to leave them alone and stop asking them to value the car. I'll see you guys in the next video. Thank you for watching. Please like, share, subscribe, and tap the bell for notifications. And I'll see you in the future with more great Mercedes content.